Hello and welcome to this session on conscious fashion powering the decade of action. Sector education and its advancement will play a key role when it comes to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. In this session, we will discuss the fashion industry's role within this, as well as some of the barriers to progressing SDG education within the industry and how we can overcome these. My name is Kirsty McGregor. I'm the editor of Drapers, a UK-based fashion magazine and events organiser. Drapers has been reporting on the fashion industry since 1887. 2 years ago, we launched the first ever Drapers Sustainable Fashion Conference, designed to bring together key stakeholders to discuss how to clean up the industry and share best practice. And we are working with the Conscious Fashion campaign to further integrate the SDGs into the programme for 2021. We also cover sustainability with increasing regularity in the magazine, online and via our newsletters, driving home the message to those in the industry that this is now business critical to find more responsible ways to produce, sell and deliver fashion. I'm delighted that I'm joined today by a panel of sustainability experts and educators. Can I ask you each to briefly introduce yourselves before we begin the discussion, perhaps starting with you, Thea?
Yeah. Hi, so I am the founder of Raw Assembly, which is a responsible and sustainable textile sourcing event and digital platform that we have a presence in London, Hong Kong and Australia. We basically we work with raw material fibres from the growers all the way through to innovation mills that are basically working for fibre to fibre, new circular innovation for the future.
Great, thank you. And Andrew.
Oh, I'm Andrew Olah. I've been in the textile industry. Our company is 61 years old. I've run the company since 1976, and we specialize in denim. And we started Kingpins show, which is a supply chain show in 2004. And we have our Transformers Foundation, which was started this year to help educate and change the industry.
And Jordana.
I'm Jordana Guimaraes, and I'm the co-founder of Fashinnovation. We're 2 years old, but we created a platform from the beginning to really evoke change when it comes to technology innovations to really help assist sustainability coming into the business models of fashion brands around the world. And really that's our focus is innovation, technology, and the SDGs when it comes to the fashion industry on a global scale.
Brilliant, thank you, and thanks for joining us today. You are all advocates of the SDGs within the fashion sector. I'm interested to know kind of how your partnership with the Conscious Fashion campaign has helped you to engage your different communities with sustainability practices. Again, Thea, maybe we can start with you, but I'd like to hear how you're all kind of experiencing that with your different communities.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're new to the Conscious campaign, so we're joining this year, which is really exciting. But basically, our event was created with a need for change within the fashion industry and the key drivers of sharing knowledge around the regenerative and circular system, innovation, ethical supply chains, and basic new economics. So for us, the Conscious Fashion campaign is really important in helping facilitate and sharing of that knowledge and helping both our partnering mills, manufacturers, and also our audience to actually find ways to accelerate systematic change that we need in the fashion industry. So we're kind of really excited about having them on board and actually working together to actually push and drive more awareness around SDGs.
And is that a similar story for you, Andrew and Jordana? Have you been working with Conscious Fashion campaign for long, or is it relatively new partnership?
Oh, I think we've been doing it for 3 years or so, or longer. We do physical events, or we used to do physical events. And during those physical events, Conscious Fashion campaign would participate. Some cases have a booth, definitely do seminars. We even had one-on-one sessions where they could actually integrate with and meet our clients and brand creative directors of different brands and people who make change in their own company, have a chance to impact. So I think the relationship has been quite healthy in the chance that we have to talk directly to the brands and to the retailers.
Out of interest, sort of 3 years ago, what was it that made you think now is the time to start partnering with organisations to kind of to spread that message a bit wider? Did you feel like 3 years ago there was a bit of a turning point in the industry's consciousness of these sustainability issues?
It might have been 2.5, and it might have been 3.5. So
well,
don't give me
I'll be checking afterwards.
You've been doing sustainable conferences for many, many years. And this is like a drum we've been beating for a very long time. And so I didn't think it was recent. I thought it was, we've been doing this for a long time. So it's nothing, it was just a very good assistance for talking to people, because the conscious fashion campaign is so credible that customers were happy to speak to them, and sometimes they're not as happy to listen to us. We're like medicine, and they're maybe like celebrity medicine.
Jordana, was a similar story for you in that it just helped you to open up those lines of communication with people within?
So what's been interesting for us is when we started 2 years ago, we really started more, the very first event, which was exactly 2 years and 2 months ago, which was a live event. It was more innovation and technology, but we found that whether it was the founder of Shopify, the UN on stage with some of their organizations, or a founder of a company like Universal Standard, all very different walks of life, but everybody was speaking on sustainability. And organically, people walked away from our live event saying, wow, that was an amazing sustainability conference, when intentionally it wasn't meant to be that, but it became that organically, which was exciting. And we really partnered with the Conscious Fashion campaign beginning of this year at our last live event, which took place in February. But then when we pivoted to online, bringing in the SDGs as the core focus with our first online event, which was April, and then we've had 3 since, they've been such a pivotal force when it comes to really, because our platform, we bring in a lot of sustainable brands, but we also have Kenneth Cole, Diane von Furstenberg. So it's a very big mix in the industry. And so it allows the brands that maybe are not in the sustainability train yet to really understand why is it important to get the SDGs involved within their business model. So it's been an incredible just partnership, and it made a lot of sense for us.
Yeah, I think that was a similar experience for us. You know, we work for the whole industry, not just those that are built on sustainable values, but more traditional brands and retailers that are now looking at their models and how they can make those kind of work better for the environment, for the planet. So it's a similar sort of thing where you need to be able to speak to both sides.
Exactly.
I mean, the fashion and textile industry, we all know, is one of the world's most polluting, and as such, it does have a significant impact on the SDGs. How can fashion play a key role in our progress towards achieving these goals within this time frame of sort of a decade of action? And why is this so important? I mean, Jordana, you just touched on the importance of it, but what do you think it is that fashion can do? What role can it play?
For me, the biggest thing so sustainability has a lot of different facets to it, right? And for me, the people is really what I think of when it comes to sustainability, and treating people fairly, and, you know, wages, and making sure that it is very inclusive. Inclusivity plays a huge role in sustainability. So for me personally, that's what really drives me to really make a difference with sustainability, is really bringing the world together, and not, you know, just having inclusivity when it comes to all parts of the industry, whether it's the people that are making your clothes, the people that are working for your organization, but even the end consumer, and really involving everybody in that conversation. So for me, sustainability is all about the people. And that's kind of what drives me towards really wanting to make a difference when it comes to that.
Thea, what do you see as fashion's role in progressing towards achieving the SDGs?
Yeah, I completely agree with Jordana, and in a sense of, you know, it's the planet and the environment and the future generations that we have to really think about. And I think the problem with the industry at the moment is we're very much stuck in the immediate. We're not necessarily looking even past our 2030 goals. We need to actually advance way past that and actually think about what we need to do today that is actually going to protect that future. And, you know, for us, we look at regeneration. We start with the soil, we start with the fiber growers, as we mentioned earlier. And it's really important that I think the industry start to just understand the impacts at all levels, because it's not just, although we are a responsible and sustainable textile event, it's not actually about just materials. It's about a whole systematic change. And as we know, we are one of the most polluting industries in the world. And, you know, we take up basically 10% of the global carbon footprint within the industry. But, you know, the thing with the fashion and textiles industry is it involves every person, every hour and every day. So we do have to think about the impact that we have and how we can change that. And the industry needs to acknowledge that we do have to change.
Andrew, what about the denim industry in particular? What's its role in terms of achieving progress, do you think?
Well, we have a lot to do. I'm kind of an inside the product kind of person. So we really want brands to be transparent. There are labels on food today of what's inside the food. And eventually, hopefully before my life is over, we'll have labels on every garment of the environmental impact. That would require having transparency. And that process will open up the data so that people can understand the data of every process in the manufacturing. So the denim industry would have to, we're working really diligently at this, the denim industry would have to actually admit from the fiber all the way through to the end of the product, what is their carbon footprint, what is their water, and so on. So I think we have a really great chance to lead the industry in that.
What do you think what's holding people back from that transparency? There must be some fear, right, on the part of brands and businesses when it comes to being that transparent, because the implications for what they have to do in terms of addressing problems in their supply chain could be huge. So are you finding that there's some pushback from the industry when it comes to those sorts of that idea of a greater transparency across the board?
I don't know if there's pushback or incredulousness. I mean, people are buying cotton the way they did in 1633 through brokers, and everything's mixed up in a big bag like a big salad. And they have no idea. If you say to them, we want you to be transparent, and they go, that's a really good idea. They actually don't even know where to start. So it's a complicated process. It's not an impossible process, but it's a process that can be fixed. And it goes from the fiber all the way out. It's really easy to buy synthetic products or man-made products, but when you deal with natural fibers, it's very complicated. But the process can be done, and it will be done.
And Thea, you're nodding enthusiastically. So is that what your vision is as well?
Totally, I completely agree. I think, the one thing that brands need to do is they just need to start with one fiber and actually just get to the bottom of knowing everyone in their supply chain. Go and meet the growers, actually work with them, understand what they need, and actually work with them on a long-term plan. I think the industry up to today, we're so quick to jump to another supply base, or there's a problem in China, so we'll move to Vietnam. There's a problem in Vietnam, so we'll move to Cambodia. We actually need to look at long-term partnerships at this point, and obviously COVID's just highlighted that even further. If we kind of look at the whole pay-up system and everyone sort of abandoning ships as such, we really have to sort of change the way that we work. And I think, one of the other big things that we really have to look at is we can't keep using the same business model that we've been using today, up to now. We know it's broken, but it comes down to it has to be the investors and also the shareholders. They have to be on board, because at the moment, all of those brands are kind of answering to, their demands. And the industry almost needs, we've had a pause with COVID, but we need to be able to actually put some investment into future innovations. We need to also bring on new fibers, as well as the portfolio that we have today. We have to replace things like polyester. We have to actually solve those issues going forward. So we need that finance and that investment going into that area. And we do need, just to change that system and actually sort of embrace a bit of a slowdown as well.
Or the laws.
Yeah, exactly. A bit of legislation might be needed.
And I just wanted to throw something in quickly. So I was recently in Brazil, and I got a chance to meet with Oscar Metzabat, who's the founder of Osclen. And they've been very much in the sustainability realm from the beginning of when they founded the company and the brand. And what he said to me that was really interesting, and it struck a chord in my head. He said, what's interesting about what you've built with Fashinnovation is that you don't come from fashion, and yet you're bringing these innovations that are not necessarily innovations in the fashion industry to the fashion industry. And so I think, to your point, Thea, and I totally agree with you, I think that innovations and technologies are really going to assist us in making that business model better and improving it. And maybe it's even already here when it comes to technologies, but we're not looking at the intersecting industries to bring it into our world when it comes to the fashion world. But I think that the minute that people have the vision and they are allowing other industries to come in or other things to be adapted into our system, I think that there's a lot of possibilities. And I think a lot of them quicker than what we would expect if we really kind of have an open mind, when it comes to an industry as a whole. So that's just something that I think is interesting.
Yeah,
What,
100% agree.
what would you say, Jordana, are the kind of knowledge gaps in the fashion industry at the moment?
I really think it's, again, it's the industry has gone the way that it's gone for a long time, and everybody doing business the same way and not really adapting change that much. They've seen you see some change here and there, but it hasn't been adapted in the way that it has to be. And I think it's fear a lot of times because of the unknown and because of so much technology so fast, especially since the pandemic. And so it's kind of no one really knows what's going on, and it's too much change and it's too quick. And so I think the knowledge gaps are really figuring out what technologies will assist them in the right way, or how do we switch up, like when it comes to fulfillment and logistics. And there's so many different parts of the supply chain, from even the fiber, having heard from you guys now, as well as from people like Econel, etc. It's just a lot of information. It's a lot of information that if you're not fully educated on it, and you're a brand that has been doing the same thing for that much time, it's something that they really need to step back, and they really need to full deep dive into that information to get all of the knowledge before they can make the decision. And I think there's just so many different parts of the supply chain that need to be figured out in that way, that it just takes a long time. And I think that until people really start to get more knowledge in these things, the change is not going to be made in the way that it should. That's what I think.
What's the solution to plugging those knowledge gaps, though? Is it about bringing new talent into the business? Perhaps, we've seen a lot of roles developing now around sustainability, and I think most of the big brands and retailers will have at least a small team now looking at, they will have had a CSR, but they're kind of dedicating more resources to sustainability. Do you think that will help them to start to unpick some of those issues and prioritize, which is obviously going to be a difficult thing because it is so complex and there are these knowledge gaps right the way along the chain?
Yeah, I think it's really being open again to maybe not getting the people in the team that they're like people within the fashion industry to the team, but maybe opening that up, maybe opening our circle. When I say our circle, I feel like fashion has been so exclusive for so long, that if we finally make it inclusive and open up the doors, I feel like, and let new people come in and really allow those new people to implement their ideas into the business and show them what they know, I think that that's when things can really start to shape up. And that's why I'm such a big believer in really making the fashion industry inclusive, and not just talk inclusivity, but really practice inclusivity, because that's when new voices come in, and when new voices come in is when new ideas take place. And then that's when magic happens. So that's my vision of it, at least, and I'm an optimist at heart, but I really feel that that's the key to like the success,
But are there still some misconceptions that exist within the fashion industry, Thea, do you think? There are a lot of players out there who are very willing to change, but there's also, we see some greenwashing, we perhaps see some misunderstanding of the different issues. What do you think are the biggest sustainability misconceptions at the moment?
I think we could probably all sit here for about an hour and talk about what we think they are, because I think there is actually so many. And, obviously we don't want to look at the negative of it, but I think, touching on what Andrew said earlier, one of the biggest ones is honesty and transparency. And that goes back to what you're just saying with greenwashing. So that lack of honesty and transparency really does drive more misconceptions, because the industry is saying one thing, the consumer's trying to understand what they should be buying and what sustainability really means. So I think, and this is where, maybe I should again touch on the polyester thing. So from Royal Assembly's perspective, we are trying to decouple ourselves from fossil fuels. So we are actually trying to move away from polyester. And I think, the biggest issue that we have is that it's really important that we use this recycled polyester. We're taking ocean waste away. We're stopping other plastics going to landfill. We have to actually capture those materials. But is the fashion industry that right end pathway for that material? Because of obviously our understanding now of the microfibers. And ultimately, if what we do understand about microfibers is true, this is something that we actually can't correct in the future, but we can correct it now by actually taking that material potentially out of our supply chain. Now, we don't have a solution today. There are people obviously working on it. We've got new biomaterials coming, which is obviously super exciting. And again, this is where Jordana, you know, saying that we're going to have multiple industries coming in to play together. You know, we've got scientists, we've got agriculture coming in, you know, people are actually sort of blending their knowledge together, and that's where we will actually get the solutions we need. You know, the other one that I would probably point out today is fibers. The industry is really quick to blame a fiber more than the people in the system. So I think we need to think about that, because we do need a portfolio of these diverse fibers, because one doesn't rule over the other. But we're very quick to kind of question the fiber versus the industry and the system that fiber goes into. And then I think my third one and my final one would be the finite materials, which again kind of sort of touches back onto the polyester a little bit, in the sense of we have to understand that, you know, the planet is, we've got finite resources and we cannot support infinite growth. So we really have to think about what we're using and what we're going to be using going forward.
It feels to me like there has definitely been tangible process in the last few years in terms of the fashion industry's willingness to get to grips with some of those issues and their understanding of it. You know, those misconceptions, I feel like if we looked back 4 or 5 years, then that you could say that across the board, whereas now you're starting to get somewhere. But a couple of you have mentioned COVID. Obviously, we can't really not talk about it. It has pressed pause on a lot of business priorities while businesses kind of knuckle down and just try and get through the next few months and the past 6 months. Within that, like, how have you found it? So you are all, you know, trying to progress education about sustainable development goals. How have you found doing that when the whole world has basically been turned on its head this year? Andrew, maybe we could start with you.
Well, when COVID hit, we were supposed to do a show in Amsterdam. It's our flagship show. And of course it didn't happen. And we were kind of more than bummed out with the situation. And New York was, of course, under attack. So we all kind of figured out that we should do something right away. The whole world was home, so we did an event in the middle of April. We did another event in May or June. I think we've done 6 events since COVID, so it's only 7 months. So we have our foundation has done educational events for universities. And in fact, in some cases, it's better online than it was in person, because we can impact more people. We can touch more people can hear what's being said. We did one last year in London and we had 350 people. We did the same thing this time for Ravensbourne and other schools in England. This time we did it, and I think our attendance on demand probably exceeded substantially what we did before. So I think that in a certain sense, we've learned a lot from COVID, and in some cases, things like this are possible because we're all over the world. We're in the United States, we're in Australia, and we're in England. I mean, this kind of thing is not so easy to do in the real world unless you do it digitally. So I think the digital entity is a really positive discovery for all of us to do certain things and to express certain things.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. We're very increasingly, we're virtually connected. Jordana, how do you think we can use this additional connectivity to progress understanding and education about the sustainable development goals within the fashion industry?
So to Andrew's point, I had a similar experience. We pivoted everything we do to online April. We had our event end of April, June, and September. And April, or when we did our first event, this is why I say, for me, it's all about people. And I always preface that because that's what I live for, is really people. So we kept the event open in April to everybody. Anybody could register. We had 129 countries watching. We had over 128,000 viewers. And we had speakers in China, in Africa, in Brazil, in Colombia, in the US. And you saw the magic that when you brought all these speakers together, whether it was a startup in India, in a village, an artisan, to a Diane von Furstenberg at the same stage, it brought this, like, it even makes me emotional because it brought hope. And you saw so many people. I mean, you're talking about thousands and thousands of people around the world that were all there for the same reason. And our reason is really to finally, like, move forward with things that really matter, you know? So, sorry. So it was a beautiful thing to see. And you really see that people, because we've been turned upside down and shaken up, people are ready to really make a difference. And I really do believe with all my heart and soul that sustainability is finally going to take a front seat. It has already in my eyes because of what I see with change, but I think we're in such a beautiful path forward right now because of everything that happened. So I think the SDGs is super important more than ever. Sorry.
No, I mean, no, it's brilliant. It's lovely to see the passion, I suppose, that it invokes in people, because I think that's what it's what you need, really, isn't it, to drive change across industries across the globe. You need very passionate people advocating for these goals, don't you, really? So yeah, don't apologize for that at all. What are the other barriers to progressing SDG education within the industry, and more importantly, how can we actually overcome those? Thea, have you got any thoughts? So apart from COVID, obviously a big one, but
it's a tricky question in a sense of, I mean, we kind of covered a lot of it already, but I think we have to go back to this cross-pollination thing, idea of sort of the industry coming together. But I think, you know, one of the biggest things that we've kind of, how do I sort of put this? I think that the industry was so used to being guarded as well, that it's sort of stopping a lot of people from maybe embracing the SDGs, because, you know, we've kind of got some brilliant innovation coming up, and there is some great investment into things. But I think a lot of people are still sort of very guarded and keeping, you know, what they need to keep sort of quiet to the business and the industry themselves. So I think that that's sort of stopping them from maybe being open and embracing a lot of these other companies that are actually connecting together. I mean, we're seeing some really great young startups who, you know, some that are coming out of Fashion for Good and other companies like that, that are really sort of embracing change in the SDGs. And rather than going to work with big corporates, they're actually working together and actually kind of pulling, you know, two innovations together to sort of go forward. So I think, you know, on the large scale, it is still just, we're being too secretive. On the next generation, the innovation front, they're going to just show everyone else how to do it. And I think that's really going to sort of open up, you know, how we progress further with the SDGs.
Yeah, and perhaps that will be another one of the, you know, there are some silver linings to come out of COVID, and particularly around the way that it has pressed pause on the way that things are done traditionally. It's making everyone kind of rethink things. And as you say, there's been a number of kind of, there are some interesting startups, and every startup that we come across at Drapers is you know, has sustainability at the core, because it's obviously the big focus for the industry right now. So it's sustainable brands, but there are also some really interesting kind of solution providers that are popping up as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how those evolve over the next few years, I guess. Andrew, how can the public sector support sustainability education within the private sector?
Well, I think the most important thing is celebration of the successful companies that are doing well and that have impact. I think it's important to also talk about impact, because it's a big problem and it needs to be dealt with in a big way at a certain point for us to really achieve success. So I think the companies that are doing the best work need to be celebrated, and they need to be treated as the ones to benchmark others, so that others aspire to achieve the same recognition. So I think that's the first thing, and that's done through the public press. That's done through the advertising or marketing or whatever way. But I think the public sector could really get engaged in that. The second thing is, I think the public sector could help in education, either through the academic institutions themselves and making it part of the curriculum, or participating in specific sustainable events for their employees as well.
So it's all about collaboration, really, isn't it? And just a final thought, you touched earlier on the topic of legislation, which we kind of skimmed past at the time, but I just wonder, do you think that there's a bigger role to be played by governments around the world in supporting this education and kind of spreading the word about the SDGs and helping to support positive progress within the fashion industry?
Yes, 1000% yes. We need laws. There should be laws. There should be a mission to have labels. This is one of my passions, is that we have to know what's in everything. None of us know if anything we're wearing has hazardous chemistry. None of you know that. You think you know because you trust your little brand, but you have no clue, and they probably don't know either. That's the scary part. So we really need to actually get into the weeds on this stuff, and we need legislation to push us towards that. And that's going to be the final answer for sustainability, because once everything is uncovered, once we know all the details, if they're bad, we're going to want to change them.
Yeah, you're nodding again. You're in agreement.
Yeah, that is the ultimate, that's where we need to be, because that's when everyone has transparency, everyone knows exactly what we have, what we're wearing, as Andrew said. No one knows. We've all spent all these years, on the floor in the factories. I spent 18 years in Hong Kong and in Shanghai, and we're in factories, we're on the ground, you see the chemicals, you see the finishes, and just brands and designers just don't ask enough questions. So I think the really important thing is that don't be scared about asking questions. Ask every single question, no question is stupid. And, we just have to question everything from finishes to coloration to what's been put on our fibers at the growing stage. And as Andrew said, we will get to that point where, we have the labels, we have the ingredients listed. And that's when we do become truly sustainable, because consumers, whether it's us, whether it's industry, we can go into a store, we can pick up a product and buy it and feel safe and comfortable with what we have.
It comes back to, if we're going to achieve these incredible kind of goals over the next 10 years, what we need is for educators, the private sector, government, all to pull together with the same goals in mind, which I suppose, is why the SDGs are important, because it focuses everybody on achieving the same things. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today, and to those of you who are watching. Thank you.